Willkommen, bienvenue and welcome to a terribly frigid Duncan House Diaries. We have hit the ground running the first few weeks of 2025, despite the mercury plummeting at times to -9, bringing with it all manner of Arctic delights. We have forged on with the burgeoning list of ventures which we seem to be undertaking here at Duncan House Diaries. You are going to witness monumental advancements in our renovation this year, so please, like us, allow yourself to get excited. As always, my first item of business is to thank you all for your warm and resplendent support, in particular relating to my first foray into cookery classes. If you are enjoying our particular flavour of nonsense, I implore you, as always, to subscribe and nourish us with your feedback. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Duncan House Diaries. We are delighted to be able to start this week's episode with a truly heartwarming story. Please do grant me some mild clemency for the aspect ratio of this chapter. Some months ago, we featured this copy of Good Housekeeping magazine from 1977 on our Treasure Tuesday series on the Instagram. The top story from this fabulous publication in April 1977 posed the eternal question, are we unfair to uglies? A thought-provoking piece which above all reminded me just how quickly the world moves on. Our rationale behind featuring the magazine was that it was full of interesting snapshots into our recent past. It had an excellent AEG dishwasher advert with what looked like particularly non-dishwasher safe china on top. A terribly witty biscuit advert deploying a very well-rounded pun. It featured a positively sultry Guinness advert, mouth-watering butchery spread, and awfully alluring perfume advertisement. Not to mention some highly engaging interior design and decor editorials featuring some truly enviable appointments. However, it was this advert for Buckingham swimming pools which would prove to be the catalyst for today's story. One of our delightful followers was immediately taken aback upon seeing this post when she realised that the gentleman sat in the swimming pool was in fact none other than her father. It turns out that Buckingham swimming pools were actually belonged to Katie's grandfather, and her father and uncle both worked in the business, on occasion modelling the swimming pools. Katie immediately reached out to us to see if she could purchase the magazine with the intention of gifting it to her grandfather for Christmas. Naturally, we were fizzing at this fortuitous stroke of serendipity, and after politely informing Katie that she would under no circumstances whatsoever be paying us a penny, we entrusted the magazine to the good folk of the Royal Mail. Luckily, we don't have any post-pinching package bandits where we live. Not long after Christmas, Katie delighted us by sending this fabulous photo and this joyous video.
Oh, good Lord. Buying a pool, Buckingham won't drop you in at the deep end. That is brilliant.
We could not agree more, sir. That is brilliant. With the intemperate festive period behind us, it was time to return our noses once more to the proverbial grindstone and start the year as we mean to go on. As you will be well aware by now, we have a long and winding road ahead of us as we march forward with the renovation of Duncan House. This year, we hope to treat you to myriad renovation and restoration delights, but before we can get to the fun stuff, there is a torrent of toil to overcome. Often, when renovating a property, one has to work backwards in order to work forwards, and this is entirely true of our electrics. After the aforementioned biblical flood at Duncombe House, the vast majority of the electrical system has been left in need of repair, and although where possible we will be reusing the original trunking, wiring and chasing, much of the former electrical installation is no longer safe or up to current codes. Although deciding at this stage where we will be placing a lamp or positioning a bed might appear a touch premature, these decisions actually have to be made now in order to appropriately position the required sockets, wall lights and switches. Initially, I was under the assumption that we would simply use oil lamps and candles for lighting, opposed to spending an egregious amount of money repairing the electrical system, but I was told in no uncertain terms by Jazzy to stop being a vexatious antiquarian. So we assembled the required apparatus and began the mammoth task of marking out. I always feel terribly accomplished when I sharpen a pencil with a knife. Luckily, unlike those skilled artisans who built Duncombe House, we had a Bosch self-leveling laser, which is one of those devices that once one has tasted its delicious convenience, one can hardly imagine life without it. Naturally, my mind was drawn to thoughts of how those aforementioned artisans would have established levels 200 years ago, and did you know that the spirit level was actually invented in 1661 by a French gentleman? One of the primary concerns for us at Duncombe House is the preservation of the lime plaster. Due to the fact that the building is of solid stone construction, the breathability of the lime will maintain a happy and damp-free home. Over the years, however, much of the original lime plaster has been replaced with modern gypsum plaster. Although this is suboptimal in terms of its breathability, it does allow us the opportunity to repair and replace dangerous or redundant wiring without having to damage sound elements of lime plaster. In many areas of the house, the plaster has literally been washed off the walls due to the flood, and in these areas we will be making repairs using a traditional lime plaster and bonding coat. But more excruciating detail on plaster in future episodes. For the moment, we simply need to bow to Quincy's eternally capricious nature and speculatively mark out the ideal locations for our electrical installation, as far as possible utilising the existing trunking and chasing, balancing minimal impact on the property with the essential practicalities of modern living. One of the most fantastic things about Duncombe House is the plethora of historical treasures which she contains. Many of which are not only intrinsically linked to the histories of those that lived here before us, but some are actually linked to the building itself. One of the most terrific finds we have made is this carpenter's chest, which was sat unassumingly under a pile of entirely nondescript detritus in the coach house pantry. Imagine our joy when we opened the lid of this chest and, opposed to finding it empty, as mysterious chests often are, we found a magnificent hoard of antique joinery instruments. Everything from handmade hand planes, chisels, drills, door and window furniture, and even the odd skeleton key. It may not be the most delicate of items, but by far the most imposing find was this gargantuan, brutalist wooden handplane. Luckily for us, we have been able to find a pair of joiners that are not just incredibly skilled, but are also deeply passionate about their craft, and took little to no persuading in order to waste a few precious hours with me seeing if we could get this majestic tool back to work. Before we'd even started, George made several highly evocative observations about this plane. Firstly, he noticed this distinct area of wear on the inside of the tool, which provides evidence to us of the consistency and frequency of its use. One can immediately picture the original owner of this tool tirelessly wielding it for hours on end, working up calluses and earning this wear mark through persistent use. The second observation was the fact that the base of the tool has a slightly offset concave channel. George surmised that this must be indicative of the original craftsman working persistently to shape 2-inch timbers, which would have been used all over Duncombe House and its outbuildings. After a jolly good rummage, we were able to find all the original components. A hand plane is a simple tool with few elements, but one that requires very exact assembly and care in order for it to perform its specific task. Planes of this type are made up of the body or stock, the backplate, blade, and wedge, and the balancing of these together will determine the accuracy and efficacy of the tool when it is driven across the surface of timber. First things first, attention was given to cleaning off the years of neglect on the metal components. Once they were in a far more manageable state, it was time to return once more a razor-sharp edge to the blade. Please excuse the champagne bucket. George asked me for some water and it was the first vessel I could find. One of the biggest issues we had was that because it was so brutally cold, the water kept freezing, not only in the bucket, but on the whetstone itself. Once cleaned, it was far easier to read the maker's mark, which on this blade was Midland Direct Supply Warehouse. This company was owned by J.G. Graves, a famous Sheffield blade-making family, based on Division Street, and was likely produced around 1900. Thank you to Amy Lally for your research. Once an edge had been re-established, it was time for the delicate task of balancing the blade to ensure that it protruded exactly the correct amount. Quick tip-tap-toe of the wooden wedge to secure the blade and blackplate in position, and it was time to see if the entire morning had been a total waste of time or merely a partial waste of time. After a few teething problems and some additional tinkering, George was able to make some gorgeous cuts and inadvertently produce some excellent kindling for the log burner. All in all, a terribly worthwhile morning was had, making absolutely zero progress on the house renovation, but achieving a solid win for history. It was terribly fulfilling to hear how beneficial you all found the main house orientation, which we put together in our last episode. And as a continuation on this theme, we thought that today, in order to give you even more perspective on our captivating little complex, it would be prudent to acclimate you with the 2 outbuildings we have here at Duncombe House. We refer to these twins as the coach house and, well, we haven't actually decided upon an all-encompassing name for this building yet. It houses the billiard room, washroom, architectural salvage cave, gardener's lavatory, and coal store. All suggestions welcome. In the interests of giving you a thorough and all-encompassing panorama, we've decided to undertake a full Magellan-esque circumnavigation of the twins. Let us begin with the currently anonymous northernmost outbuilding. We start by venturing up the stone steps, past the fuchsia rigatoni, past the secret door to the billiard room, and out onto the drive. You will see here from this perspective that the back wall of this outbuilding is actually sunken into the bank, which means it stays terribly dry and has zero damp issues on the walls inside. As we casually lollop back along the drive and through the main gate for Duncombe House, one can easily imagine arriving here hundreds of years ago, either by horse or even perhaps in one's chaise and four. Some of the original large cobbled drive is still present adjacent to the hatch, which in bygone years would have been used to load coal into the store. If you can, take a moment to picture a pair of imposing wooden gates across this opening, which would have presented a formidable initial aspect to the house. Our plan for this particular building is very simple. At this stage, we feel inclined to leave it very much alone. Of course, we must make the required investments into the roof, windows, render, heating, and electrics in order to safeguard her, but in terms of her use and orientation, she will remain very much the same. Next up, we have our excruciatingly mysterious coach house. Now seems like as prudent a time as any to address the elephant in the room. Naturally, at some point in the past, these fabulous buildings would have been plain red brick. And at some point, and I'm sure with the best intentions at the time, they were covered with this rough cast. Although it wouldn't have been my personal preference, I am still able to appreciate the subtle, varying hues of brownish grey, as they mature left to right from murky autumn puddle all the way through to moonscape silver grey. For many, many years, this building would have been home to both horses and their grooms. No expense was spared in ensuring the comfort of both its equine and Homo sapien inhabitants. The coach house enjoys central heating, electrics, drainage, and even its own kitchener, all now sadly in somewhat of a state of disrepair. Our plan for this building is to restore it to its former glory, once more making it fit for human habitation. Although it may never see horses again, we hope the coach house will once more be able to provide cosy additional accommodation for friends and family for another 100 years. There are lots of exciting renovations planned for the coach house and plenty for all of us to get excited about. When we purchased Duncombe House, the previous owner told us that because the old timber stairs to the upper floor had been rotten and unsafe for so many years, she estimated that not a single soul had stepped foot up there for over 50 years. I'm sure I don't need to explain to you our excitement when we finally managed to get up there and let ourselves in. It was the closest thing to stepping into a time machine I have ever experienced, and we will in time be sharing that experience with all of you, I assure you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our external orientation of the two outbuildings here at Duncombe House. I do hope that has given you all even more of an understanding, one, of the layout of our little compound, and two, just how much work we have ahead of us. Oh yes, and if anyone knows the proper term for a building which is half billiard room, 1/4 washroom, and 1/4 coal store, please do let me know. We were extraordinarily fortunate last weekend to be able to stay at Jazz's delightful holiday cottage called Butler's Lodge. This building originally was the home to the head butler who worked at Calais Abbey many moons ago. It is not often we get a chance to stay there because it is so popular with visitors, escaping the roller coaster of life to indulge in some rural peace and quiet. So when we do get the opportunity, it feels terribly luxurious. And if we can persuade some friends to come and join us for Scrabble, then it's even more enjoyable. On that theme, I've had an idea. So many of our lovely subscribers tell us how delightful they think the English countryside is, and often how they wish they could be strolling over its green and pleasant hills. So, although this is virtual, we wanted to offer you the opportunity to take a few conscious minutes out of your day, sit comfortably, relax, and indulge in some Staffordshire-flavoured escapism. You will be relieved to know that I won't be speaking for the next 5 minutes, which will hopefully be even more conducive to you being able to take some time to reset whilst you join us on a dog walk from Butler's Lodge. If the present moment isn't particularly convenient for you to sit back and relax, then please do skip forward to chapter 6. There is an almost endless list of things that we require at Duncombe House, and there really is only one thing that we absolutely do not require, and that is more treasure. So you will appreciate my confusion when Jazzy informed me that we would be spending our terribly valuable Thursday taking a 4-hour round trip to collect 2 ornate planters which she had purchased for the house on the interweb. When questioned on the what, why and how of this acquisition, it was politely pointed out to me that considering that I had recently purchased an entirely unnecessary late 19th century wall-mounted French corkscrew, that I had not one single leg to stand on. Very fair. One presumes reclamation yards are a global phenomenon, and I hear that the yards in France take the title of the best, but we do have a certain soft spot for English architectural salvage. Offer us a preposterous chimney pot, superfluous Belfast sink, or a cherubic version of the Dave Brubeck Quartet, and we are putty in your hands. The collection of reclaimed treasures at Watling Reclamation Yard is fabulous, and unlike many of the more chaotic yards, which in turn of course have their charms, Watling is exceptionally well organised, making it far easier to find what you're looking for, whether that's ridge tiles or oversized flower pots. Coping? Only just. Fortunately, we were able to locate Jazzy's planters, and after wrestling for some moments, we were able to load them into the truck and haul them back to Duncombe House. Unsurprisingly, we are yet to find a home for them, so for now they will simply be added to our constantly multiplying collection of bits and bobs. Quincy has decided that 2025 is going to be the year of work hard, play hard, and rest hard. The working thing is, and she would admit it herself, something she's trying for the very first time, and is yet to decide whether it suits her or not. She started her year by making a new friend. Roger by name, Roger by nature. Although she didn't win Scrabble, she did achieve a commendable score considering how much Bollinger she'd consumed. Champagne does seem to be her one weakness. Despite the freezing temperatures, she has been educating Roger on all things countryside. For some unknown reason, despite having a perfectly good bowl of water, which I actually warmed slightly so it was more temperate, these two clowns decided it would make far more sense to drink water from the stone clam. The only predicament seemed to be deciding which of the two holes contained the sweetest tasting H2O. They shared a stick together, which as anyone knows is the dog version of becoming blood brothers, and a true and lasting bond was created. After consuming all of those tartiflette calories over Christmas, she's decided to start a new exercise regime and take up the spot of running. Wisely, however, and like a true athlete, she also understands the importance of quality, recovery, and stretching. The past 2 weeks have been by far the coldest we have experienced so far here at Duncombe House. Sitting near the bottom of the valley seems to mean it gets a good few degrees colder around our house opposed to elsewhere. Also, and I'm sure this is a phenomenon that someone will be able to explain to me, it is much colder inside the house than it is outside. Not the best of omens. The obvious upside to frigid temperatures is that we have been on more than one occasion treated to gorgeous halcyon days and quite humbling sunrises across the valley. We certainly do look forward to the day when we will be able to enjoy this majestic and ephemeral spectacle from the comfort of our own bedroom. It is highly fortuitous that we were able to get the log burner installed when we did, although we do seem to be eating logs. Luckily, we have a very good friend who happens to be an expert at chopping. He also has a very precise throwing style, and as you can witness here with your very own eyes, Rob can boast an approximate overall accuracy rating of 90%. So if anyone in the GB Discus team is watching today, please do reach out and we might be able to arrange a call. My only hope is that Rob was in fact jesting when he suggested chopping down Clive. And just like that, we have sadly come to the end of another episode of Duncombe House Diaries on the YouTube. Thank you ever so much for your time and support. At this time of year, we are in need of your warmth more than ever. If you feel so inclined, please do subscribe to our silly little channel. Have a fabulous remainder of your January, and I will be back once more to share with you our progress in just 2 weeks' time. Ladies and gentlemen, TTFN.